We are starting the very last section of notes, and we are looking at human impact. And so when we talk about human impact, we look at the human population and how has the human population affected the rest of the biosphere, or the rest of the living things on Earth. And so the first thing that we actually look at is the idea of human population growth. Human population used to be limited. It used to be that we didn't have enough food, space, water, and so the human population used to be very limited. And now we've started to see that the human population has grown, we want to say exponentially. And this is like the J curve. And so there are three main reasons that the human population has what we call exploded to the point of where we have billions of people on Earth. The first is the agricultural revolution. More food would support more people. Normally, food is what we would have called a limiting factor. Except, now that we have the agricultural revolution and we can grow farms full of food, we can support more people. So normally food would have been a limiting factor that set what we call a carrying capacity, meaning that if too many people were born and we didn't have enough food, some people died. But the agricultural revolution has allowed many more people to be able to live. Then we have the industrial revolution and urbanization. And these are the three main factors or causes of why the human population has exploded. The Industrial Revolution doesn't just have to do with machines. It also has to do with medicine. And so our ability to help people live longer. So we have an increased birth rate, meaning more are being born. So more are born, and we have a decreased death rate, which means fewer people die. We have people who live into their hundreds now, and that's a really long time to live. And the longer you're around Earth, the more you're counted as part of the Earth's human population. So because people live longer, we have this much bigger population that we're trying to support. Urbanization is where we developed cities, and remember, this is going to help us have more space to live. So basically what has happened is that we've removed most of the limiting factors that would limit the human population. And that's why the human population has continued to grow. So when we look at human population growth, even as long as 1,000 years ago, we see that the human population hadn't even reached 1 billion yet. But all of a sudden we reached 1 billion and 2 billion and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6, and we have really grown as the human population. And this can put a lot of stress on the rest of the environment. So what are the effects of human population growth? The first is overcrowding. And we don't see it as much in Charlotte, but if you go to some of the even bigger cities, New York, Chicago, places like Tokyo and Shanghai, those cities are so crowded. And what that means is an increase in pollution. All of the environmental problems relate back to human overpopulation. And so what we've done is we've tried to solve some of our problems. And it turns out that solving some of those problems means that we've actually caused other problems. So for example, if we think about trash, if you live in a big city, there's lots of trash and lots of people's trash. And so what do? We put it in a bag and we tie it up, and a truck comes by and picks up that trash. But what it means is that we don't really realize how much waste or trash we're producing. Because you put it in a bag, and you put that bag in a trash can, and someone picks up that trash can every week, we really don't think about how much waste we're producing. And so all of those increases in pollution are because there are so many people, and we've tried to come up with creative ways to deal with that also means that we see a decrease of natural resources. Remember, some of our natural resources are what we call non-renewable. Some are non-renewable, meaning we can't replace them. So especially things like fossil fuels. Once we burn them, we can't replace them. We also see increased land use. So what are some of the solutions? The first one is called zero population growth. And this is where we have to be a little careful. Zero population growth doesn't mean that we're trying to get the population to be zero. Zero population growth means that we're trying to have the population not grow. So the idea is that the birth rate should equal the death rate. And so what we're trying to get at zero population growth is we're trying to achieve a carrying capacity. And let's draw the graph of that. Right now, the human population has been growing like this, and we want to see it level off to where there's no more growth. That doesn't mean that we go around killing people, then the population would go down. We just want it to balance off. China, excuse me, maybe I capitalize this, see, China offers tax incentives for only having one child. So their population got so big so fast that they just want individuals to have one child. But we want to write in here that zero population growth usually looks like two parents have two children. This means that when those two parents die, their two children take their place in Earth's population, meaning that the population doesn't grow, it's just stable. And so normally this is how we get zero population growth. Two parents have two children, the birth rate equals the death rate, those born equal those that die, and we start to see the population level off at a carrying capacity. And so zero population means that we have to educate people about making choices about how many children they want to have. In China, it used to be a law that you could only have one child. In fact, if you have a second child, they won't let that child register for school. That child doesn't get like an ID number, like a social security number. And so we start to see that some nations have been really adamant or strongly trying to get zero population growth. Other countries haven't. But if we at least educate people and we offer ways to help people make decisions about how many children they want to have, then people can at least make a choice on their own. So one of the other things that we can do is what's called conservation. It's the wise and careful use of resources. And what this means is that we do things like reduce, reuse, and recycle. And so it means that you don't buy lots of little bags of potato chips. You buy a big bag, and you eat a little bit at a time in a Tupperware that you can reuse. And so conservation is just this idea that everyone can do something really small. You can turn your thermostat up 1 degree. You can recycle a plastic bag using it more than once. And so conservation looks like reduce, reuse, and recycle. Use less materials, reuse products more than once, and return products to be reprocessed. And so this leads to an idea called sustainability, ensuring the availability of resources and a stable environment for future generations. It's being aware that the choices that we make impact the earth, especially for future generations. There's a saying that says, we didn't inherit the earth from our parents, we're borrowing it from our children. And so it's just this idea to get us thinking about what are the choices that I can make. The final thing that we want to look at is how can we predict what will happen to a country? And so what we look at is a histogram. A histogram shows us the age, percentage of males and females in the population. And so we need to a population that has a lot of young people. Notice we see percent of population. So it's not a number. It doesn't tell us 1 million people under the age of 30. It says what percent of the population. So if we have a large percent that are young, they're going to grow up and have kids. Versus this older part of the population, they're not reproducing anymore. So for every male and female that's in the population, it's likely that they'll have children of their own. And so when you have a large percent that is young, it means that your population is growing. And if you look, this kind of looks like an upward point of an arrow. This population, the population of Kenya, is going to grow. If we look at this population, we see that it's kind of stable, it's kind of equal. So we call this a slow growth or stable population, meaning the population is pretty equal. Approximately this number will die and approximately this number will be born, and they're pretty equal. We can also see sometimes what is called a negative growth. And that's where the population is decreasing. And this could be because of war, it could be because of famine, it could be because of a natural disaster. And so one of the things that we try to do in biology, in the study of science, is make predictions and make recommendations about what sort of changes we could make. So we might look at a movement in Kenya and begin to talk to people about making conscious or careful choices about how many children they decide they want to have. That's all the notes for today.